Well, I was never a huge fan of the first Anchorman. In fact, we chose it as TV Movie of the Week last week because I wanted to go back and look at it again. Funnily enough, that very first one in 2004, I remember sitting in a press screening, and there were a whole bunch of newsreaders who had gone along to see it. It was obviously sort of like a like a day out jolly or whatever, because they always want they always want to be able to comment on it. And I remember sitting there and everybody laughing quite a lot, and thinking, well, it's fine, but it's not. It's not as funny as I need to be. I've never been the world's biggest, Will Ferrell fan, although he has worked with Emma Thompson, and so therefore he's not.
Is it because you have a tin ear for comedy?
Well, that's the thing that's always thrown at me, is that I've got a tin ear for comedy. In the particular case of Anchorman 2, but then of course, as you rightly said, Anchorman's reputation grew, and it grew on DVD, and people learned to quote it, and then you could get T-shirts and blah 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 blah, and it became a proper cult film. So whether I liked it or not, it was a proper cult film. In the case of this, the story about the sequel coming out, there's been several years of this. Adam McKay saying, back in 2008, yeah, we want to do it. And then there was a whole thing with the studio saying they'd done the numbers and the numbers didn't fit. And then there was a story about they were going to do it as a Broadway musical, and it was going to be from a Broadway musical into a film. So this has been going around for a long time. Now it finally arrives. And on the good side, it does actually have a proper satirical backbone, in that it is about the launch of 24 Hour News, about the launch of Rolling News. This guy who's in charge is this guy who's a kind of, he's an Australian who seems to have Rupert Murdoch's soul in Richard Branson's body. And that is a stronger satirical backdrop than they had for the first film. The problem is that once you've got that, you then have to deliver the laughs as well. So you've got fun. Okay, we've now got a firm structure. We've got we've got something, because during the course of the movie, Ron Burgundy accidentally invents what we now think of as news bereft 24 hours. He suddenly realizes that live car chases and stupid pet stories and ridiculous American patriotism don't just have a good evening, have an American evening. That all that stuff will win in the ratings war. So that stuff is actually quite surprisingly solid. The problem is that on top of it, you've got essentially the same gags. I mean, it was interesting when he said in that interview, they haven't moved on at all. They are still the same, completely unself-aware, completely sexist, completely. What they've added into the mix this time is, on one, there's this element, this very overdrawn out and very, very outdated series of interracial gags about the fact that Ron Burgundy can't deal with the fact that his boss is an African American, and that begins as a gag. You think it's going to be a throwaway gag, but it goes on and it goes on, and then there's a whole thing when he goes round to her house, and there's a really extended sort of scene around, in which he's failing to fit in and he's attempting to do jive talk, and you just think, this joke is very, very old. I mean, I know the film's got a period setting, but it doesn't have to be period humour. There are individual things in it that are funny. I think Steve Carell is funny. I think Kristen Wiig is sort of, to some extent, wasted, although the stuff about her and Brick having, the beginning of a relationship is the funniest thing in the film. The problem, however, is that the film itself starts to lose confidence. You get the thing at the beginning, it's like the Blues Brothers, it's let's get the gang back together, so you have to go and visit Brick, and you have to go and visit the guy who's doing the chicken. And so you do all that stuff. Everybody gets to do their little party piece. You round them all up. And then about the halfway mark, the film starts to go, okay, right, and what we're going to do now? And what it does now is it starts to fall into the tics and traits of before, but with celebrity cameos. And so you get the kind of the reprise of the street fight, but it's umpteen times bigger, and it's got umpteen more celebrities. You get the same sort of cheap, crass gags, but they're sort of slightly cranked up and slightly old hat. So my problem is, well done for actually having a proper thriller, because generally what happens with sequels is that the thing they lack is that the original's got a really good through line, and then the sequel is, oh, let's go on holiday. That's why so many sequels are, let's go on holiday. So we go to Europe, or, let's go somewhere else. They have to put everyone on the road because they've done everything. In this case, the underlying structure is better. The underlying satire is better. The underlying thread is better. But the gags aren't funny enough, and I'm sure this is in that email. It comes down to insufficient laughter. I sat there in a room, and you had a different experience. I sat there in a screening room in which laughter was notable by its absence. It wasn't that nobody was laughing at all. It's that everybody wanted to laugh more, because the affection for the characters and the affection for that particular setup is so great that everyone went in with a kind of rictus grin, wanting to laugh. And the movie didn't give them what they needed. I mean, it wasn't silent. Now, I know you had a different experience, because you said that in the room that you were in, there were two people behind you who were laughing like hyenas. But what's interesting is that it seems to me, from the way you told me that story, that they were the exception. So structurally better, in terms of, but it's just not funny enough. And it's not funny enough by quite a long way. And in the bits that it misjudges, particularly the interracial humour bits, it's kind of embarrassingly flat.